Thank you. I invite you to take a step inside yourself and observe this room. Look out through your eyes at this room just like you're looking out through the windows of your house. There is a show going on out there, and I'm aware of it just looking through these eyes. If any thoughts occur on the screen of your mind, just watch them as they come and go. Not holding on to them, not resisting them, just observing. I'm just observing anything that comes on the screen of my mind, and I become present. Thank you. Congratulations, you just did a micro meditation, a small step in cutting through the clutter in the head and slowing down. Meditation is the art of getting in touch with what is real and stepping away from the drama of everyday life. The immediate result is resilience, the ability to bounce back quickly from adversity. It does this both by clarifying for us what really matters to each of us, and also gives us the strength to stay true to one's purpose in life. Growing up in India, I was really never interested in meditation. I thought it's for old people who are at the end of the road. I had no idea that one day I will be standing up in front of an audience and speaking about it. India may be known the world over as a place to find your enlightenment. But truth be told, TV was the guiding light in my wonder years. So let me tell you a little story about my childhood growing up in India. It was 1984, the Los Angeles Olympic Games were on. They were on TV. Our family had a color television. India had two TV channels at that time, National Network number 1 and National Network number 2. We got all of our news and entertainment from it, and everybody seemed quite satisfied. Then one day, we got cable. Suddenly, we jumped from 2 to 6 channels overnight, and then pretty soon after that, to 11, to 50, and then 100. Now, the volume of programming that was broadcast on these channels were not obviously produced in Indian studios. The Indian studios could not keep up with that. So guess where the shows were coming from? They were the shows from the West. Shows like Santa Barbara and Bold and the Beautiful became very popular. Now, I want you to imagine something. A traditional Indian living room, a culture that has not changed that much in 5,000 years. On the couch, you have the grandmother, the mother, and the daughter, 3 generations, sitting down and watching Santa Barbara in the evening. A show that is not rated that high for its moral values. I grew up at a time when this 5,000-year-old culture saw some of its fastest changes in its history. The invasion by the Muslims, the Mughal Empire, the 200-year rule by the British did not change Indian culture that much. But what we've seen in the last 30 years has been unprecedented. So what could these television shows do to you? there's a phenomenon called monkey see, monkey do. So scientists in Parma, Italy, studied monkeys in a lab using EEG apparatus. They would study which part of the brain fired when they brought a peanut in front of the monkey, and they saw what part of the brain fired when it ate the peanut. One day, they brought the peanut out, and instead of giving it to the monkey, the scientist ate the peanut while the monkey was watching. What they noticed is that the exact same part of the brain fired both when the monkey ate the peanut and when it saw the scientist eating the peanut. That's because of mirror neurons that both humans and primates have. The brain cannot distinguish between seeing something and doing something. This is why we cry at the movies, or we completely lose ourselves at football games. This is also the reason why top athletes use visualization as a tool for training. Growing up in India, in school, first grade to 12th grade, I had 30 kids in my class. There were 5 sections, making a total of 150 kids. Of all of them, one boy's parents were divorced. Today, that same group has been married for about 15 years, 10 to 15 years. I know about 10 cases of divorce. This is just one example of the social changes that I've noticed in India in this last 30 years. Now, fast forwarding my story, I came to America in 1996, expecting life here to be like Baywatch. And going to an Aerosmith concert was nirvana. I got accepted into grad school at the University of Texas at Austin with a full scholarship. I had an apartment right by the pool. That program was the #1 in petroleum engineering in the world. In the first summer, I got an internship with my dream company. There was spare cash. I traveled to different parts of the world. Life was looking set. But internally, there was an emptiness. Externally, I looked like I was having a lot of fun, but I was constantly searching for something else, and I did not know what that thing was. I traveled to India in 1997, like I did every Christmas, to visit my family. There I had met a childhood friend of mine. He had become a very different person than I'd known him before. He took to waking up early and meditating. He'd become a vegetarian. Now, this is not part of his Islamic faith as far as I could tell. And this kid was pretty smart in school, so it couldn't have been the passing fad of a guru who had just come through town. So he invited me to this Raja Yoga meditation center. Now, as a 22-year-old, I had been to a lot of queer places, some of which I can't talk on camera here, but a meditation center was not one of them. So curiosity led me to going to the center. 2 things that I learned at the center really appealed to me. Number one, they talked about something so fundamental as finding one's life purpose, which I hadn't heard in any of my schools, colleges, or corporate programs. Then they also talked about meditation, and I learned some techniques to understand and get in touch with my essence. So I come back to Austin, and I start practicing in my apartment. One day, I woke up pretty early in the morning. It must have been about 4 o'clock in the morning. I popped a cassette tape. It had a guided commentary, and I tried to follow what it was saying. So the commentary went like this. See a tiny point of light inside your head. Imagine a tiny point of light just behind your eyes. Now shine that light up towards the brain, then towards the eyes, to the nose, to the mouth, the ears, the back of the head, and gently let that light shine through the throat passage into the chest region, filling and surrounding the heart, the lungs, the intestines, the kidneys, the liver, and down to the hip region. Now shine that light down the left leg, going all the way down to the toes. Next, shine that light down the right leg, going all the way down to the toes. Now shine that light down the right arm, going all the way down to the fingers. And then down the left arm, all the way down to the fingers. After some time, I lost awareness of my body, and I experienced a realm of clear, powerful light. It lasted about 30 minutes or an hour, I'm not really sure, but when I came back, the first thought that came to mind, I felt like every pore of my body was oozing with energy. And I asked myself, people do drugs and alcohol for this kind of a kick? I wasn't drunk or high. I was just thinking. I was just sitting. That was 14 years ago. That was the day I realized that how I feel is not based on what's going on around me, but really it's what's going on inside of me. There's not much I can control in this world, but that day I realized that how I feel is ultimately in my control, or it could be with practice. Life begins to set back in, the clutter begins to fill in. It's like housekeeping, you're always behind. This void that this dissatisfaction causes, we try to fill that void with consumption, hoping that the next new gadget or the next new partner will make us more complete and fulfilled. Our insatiable desire to consume results in 500,000 cell phones being retired every day in this country. We live in an era of unprecedented breakthrough in technology, but it hasn't prevented this from being an era of unprecedented levels of stress and depression. According to CDC, the suicide rate of Americans between the ages of 35 and 64 has jumped up by 28% in the last decade. That's more deaths in this age group than motor vehicle crashes. According to the American Institute of Stress, every week they report about 20 cases of homicide and 18,000 assaults at workplaces in America. This has become so common that the phrase going postal has crept into our language. People around the world this year have been remembering Martin Luther King 50 years on from his famous I Have a Dream speech that he delivered at the National Mall. Another one of his famous speeches, he said, "We live at a time when our spiritual power has been outrun by scientific power. We have guided missiles and misguided men." I'd wonder what he'd make of our progress since then. So how do we regain a balance between the progress of our inner and outer worlds? I realized that I have to consciously take time to slow down. Create space in my life when I can disconnect from the gadgets and take a break from consumption. It's a time to cultivate my own happiness and fulfillment. The sages of the East call that meditation, and they saw that every bit as essential as eating, breathing, and sleeping. But what about those of us who don't want to live up in the monasteries or in the caves? There's some very practical ways to benefit from meditation in our busy lives. So here are some basics. Number one, the brain is the most abused muscle in the body. When you sit down to meditate, you're going to have all kinds of waste thoughts, and that's okay. Number two, stop trying to stop thinking. The trick is really to step back and observe your thoughts without judgment. Let your feelings be your guide, not your thoughts. Think of it more like a dance than a mathematical problem. Lead with your heart space. And number 4, there's no such thing as a good or a bad meditation. Be patient with yourself and enjoy your own unfolding. Oh, one more thing. In this next meditation, it's okay to fall asleep, but just don't snore. So I want you to go back and step inside yourself and see that point of light again. We'll open our heart through the practice of compassion by sharing this light with the world. So imagine that light lifts off into the sky like a helium balloon, rising above this building, above the tree line, and it anchors itself just above the city skyline. From there, you can see the entire city laid out in front of you, just like after a few minutes of flying in an aircraft, you're looking down at out of the window. I radiate this healing light down towards the city, bathing it in a cool, peaceful light, just like the moonlight. It spreads like a fragrance throughout the city. Everyone and everything in every corner of the city can feel this energy of peace. Next, let us take a step higher. See the light rising above the atmosphere. And it anchors itself just above the globe. Looking down from here, you can see this beautiful planet of green, blue, and white. I send this healing light down into nature. Touching the land masses, the seas, the forests, the animals, and humans. Let us gently return to the awareness of this room. Thank you. Notice how you feel right now compared to before going on this journey of light. We created this collectively through the power of human consciousness. Now, some of you may be thinking, wow, that felt great. Now, what about trying to do more of that in my life? How do I incorporate that? So some suggestions for that. Number 1, learn more about meditation. Use Google to find a meditation center that's convenient for you. Number 2, take 20 minutes every day to meditate. This is the time for yourself. I use that little spaces in between activities, like when I'm on the treadmill or when I'm before eating each meal. Number 3, reflect on what do you want your life to be about. Discover your own sense of what success means. It's easy to think about what you don't want in life, and it's very important that you understand that what you want is really what you want and not what somebody else wants of you. There's a saying that company colors. Find like-minded friends. They're going to help you to explore, to learn. This has been one of the greatest gifts in my journey. Now, I want you to imagine a not so distant future in which every living room, everywhere in the world, in every little town, in every little country, the three generations are sitting down in the evening and sharing these feelings that we are experiencing right now. What would that world look like? Thank you.